In this lesson, let's start with some basics on selection. Nothing great, and some of this might be old hat for you, I will agree, because selection's been around for a long time, but maybe I can throw a couple of things at you here. Let's start with some of the basics, and the basics would be things like these tools, this set and this set down here. The marquee tools have been there, obviously, for a long time. If we say go to the rectangular marquee tool and come over here and draw, I think most people know that if I hold the Shift key down, I will draw a perfect square. Or if I hold the Alt key down, I will draw out from center. If I held the Alt key and the Shift key at the same time, I would basically make a perfect square that I drew out from center. Again, that's pretty old hat. If you want to add to a selection using any selection tool, these basic ones, I can come over into, say, the object and hold the Shift key down. You see a little plus sign come up. If I click and hold, it would allow me to add to that selection. If I want to make it non-contiguous, I can come over here. It'll be more than happy to allow me to do it there too. If I want to take away from a selection, I can hold the Alt key down and say get inside of it. Hold the Alt key, you see a negative, and then I can come over here and take a little piece out of it if I want to do something like that. So if you want to get kind of like design conscious about doing something like this, I suppose you could make some pretty unique type of selections with the basic tools using Shift keys and using Alt keys to add or subtract while you're making the process work. Now we know what happens when we have a selection. We can fill it with a color, we can delete it, we can move it, we can do anything we want. Selection is the name of the game here. Let me go ahead and press undo, and I'll press Control D, which is deselect. Now, most of these tools have similar options. For example, if we go into the rectangle tool and hold on it, we have elliptical marquee. The elliptical marquee has one extra option here, and it's this one right here, anti-aliasing. Now, first off, if I go back to the marquee, you notice that's grayed out up here. If I come over here and draw another square, rectangle, whatever, let me go ahead and choose a different color and fill that area with that color, and I'll deselect. If I pick up my zoom tool, now I've got an option called scrubby zoom on, which came out in the last version, and basically what that does is allow me to hold and do this, and you will notice that you're looking at the actual raster of this image, the actual bricks, the pixels that make it up, and you will notice that the edges are perfectly smooth because that's how the raster is laid out. There is no need for anti-aliasing. Now, what is anti-aliasing? Let me go ahead and bring this back to normal, and we'll leave that alone for now. If I come over here and pick up, say, for example, my elliptical marquee, and you'll notice there it is again. Well, let me do one without. I'll get right about here, hold the Alt key down, and make an oval about like that. And then go ahead and fill that with a color. Now I'm filling it with a color using Alt and backspace. Now that one's anti-alias off. And I'll go ahead and draw another one and turn that on. Get right about here, hold the Alt key down. They won't be the exact perfect matches, but they'll be close. And Alt backspace again. Now if we blow them up, actually you can see it already. That edge does not look as smooth as this one. So how, when you think about it, in the world, do you smooth a brick, a square? We use sandpaper on the edges? No, it's kind of interesting how this works. Zoom in on it so you can see it. Get right about there. When you're working with something that has the alias to it, it's adding stuff. It's adding pixels. Those pixels start out at the same color and slowly go transparent on the edges. Over here, it doesn't do that. It leaves that off. So when something is viewed at its normal size, you don't see this. What you see is what looks like, because of the transparency on the edges, a smoother surface. You have an option of turning that on and off. I would suggest that in most cases, you're probably going to leave that option on because it just makes sense to have something look smoother. But when we get into the chapter on text, you'll find reasons why you might not want to turn that on or why you would. It's there if you need it on some of the tools. As you can see, on tools that don't have rounded edges, it's not necessary. Now you have a single row and a single column marquee tool. Let me do this. Let me go ahead and go to the gradient layer and press Control A and press Delete. Get rid of everything for the moment. If I pick up that one and come over here and click, it literally creates a line 1 pixel wide, left to right. And I could go up and down if I wanted to. If I fill that with a color, as you can see, that's all I have. Now what you can do with this is, for example, I use these to make grids. So if I come over, pick up my Move tool, and hold on the Alt key and drag down, every time I drag down, I am making a copy. Now, in terms of this really looking good, it doesn't yet, obviously. So I'm going to select all of them over here by going to the bottom and shift clicking. And then I'm going to come up here because you do have align features. Now they work similar to something like Adobe Illustrator, but the difference is these must be in separate layers, and they are. Each one of those lines is in a separate layer. And I can go right about here and click, and it will be more than glad to align them for me based on the top and the bottom. So you could, I don't know, I suppose you could use that tool for making things like grids and guides. Wouldn't be too bad for that. Let's go back over here into one of the other ones, like the rectangle marquee. And while we're here too, maybe I want to put all these together into one layer. Now if you press Control E is merge down. And I could merge copy 5 into copy 4 into 3, 2, and copy, and then gradient. But if you have them all selected like I do, Control E functions differently. If you press Control E, it does everything at the same time. That's not bad to know that you can do that. Let's go ahead and press Control A and delete one more time on those. Let's come over and pick up our rectangular tool. Now over here, a lot of these tools have a feather. Now what the feather does, if I come over and just draw one more box really quick and fill it with a color, and then we come over here and feather, say by about 12. If I draw another box, you'll notice the edges look a little bit rounded. If I fill that, you'll notice it's soft. That's what feathering does. But it's not a feather of 12, it's a feather of 24. It goes 12 on either side of the line when you draw it. You also have on a lot of your selection tools a style option. Now you can do a fixed ratio. Now 1 to 1 means exactly 1 to 1. If I come down here and draw, it's like I'm holding the shift key down. It forces me into a 1 to 1 ratio. Let's go ahead and take our feather back to 0. If I change that, for example, I do a lot of stuff for internet work, and a lot of the monitors that are still out there have a 4 to 3 ratio, like 1024 by 768 and 800 by 600 are 4 by 3. So if I do a fixed ratio of 4 and then 3 and come down here and draw, no matter what I do, the ratio matches the ratio of normal monitors out on the internet. So you could do something like that, I suppose. If we come over here again, you've got fixed size, and that explains itself. If you need a box exactly 64 by 64 pixels, which is the default, and you come over here and you click, that's what you're going to get. But you can change those numbers to anything that you want. These marquees have those options available for them. Now you have a refine edge option over here. We're going to talk about that in another lesson because that's really cool in this chapter. But if we go up here, we have a selection down here. If we go up to the word select on the pull down menu, you have a few more things. For example, you have a select all, which would mean select the entire page. You have a deselect, which means don't use it. You have a reselect, which I talked about earlier in the last lesson, and that's pretty cool. That means if you lose that selection and you really wish you had it back, but it was 20 minutes ago and you haven't made any other selections, it will bring it back for you. You have an inverse, which basically means select everything but what I selected, which is actually a pretty cool one, mainly because sometimes it's easier to select something like a sky when what you really want is the land. And so you could do an inverse to make that happen. Control-Shift-I is the shortcut for that. Let's go back up here again for a second. Some of these things we're going to talk about as this lesson progresses, but if you come down here, you've got a modify option. You can change the border, you can smooth it, expand it, contract it, or there's feather again. And you have two others down here. You have one called grow, and you have one called similar. Now if I select grow, and watch that little box down there, what it did is it grew to include all the pixel samples that were inside of that box, which were transparent actually. The white is part of the background, and it selected everything except the areas that were blue. If I come back again and draw, say, a selection, say, in here, and let's get off our fixed size, but we'll leave it for now, and we go into select and select grow again, it will grow within the boundaries of the range of color that you had selected. If I undo that, I love undo, and we go back up to select. In this case, we have another one, similar. Similar, well, watch what it does. It will select this area and it will select this area because they are similar in color. So the difference between grow and similar is grow is contiguous. It stays within an area, and similar is non-contiguous. It'll go anywhere you want it to go. Let's go ahead and Control D that to get rid of the selection. So there you have it. Just some of the basics on selection that you kind of need to know, might already know to be honest with you, that help you make selection tools, even simple ones like marquee tools, powerful. On to the next.